to today's Mishnah Berurah class. In today's class, we are going to further explore the laws of Tefillah. We are going through the rules of a Shaliach Tzibur that makes an error, which means that they either say the words wrong or they go in the wrong order. So let's get ready to dive into that a little bit as we begin to kind of wrap up prayer services. Shemona Esrei, this is the next to last one on Shemona Esrei. So we have this one and we have Modim D'Rabbanan. And then that's basically it for Shemona Esrei. Then we talk about a separate section, technically speaking, about Nesias Kapayim, about the blessing of the Kohanim that is often done, or in Sephardic congregations, and not often done, and not as often done in Ashkenazi congregations. So that'll be a brand new topic and a brand new day. And then there's a lot more to go through in terms of the laws of the Shacharis service, for example. But we will continue because there's a lot to cover. So we have the next after Tefillah will be the blessing of the Kohanim, the recitation of Tachanun, and then we will go into the laws of reading the Torah, Kriyas Torah, which is its own separate section, not considered part of the laws of Tefillah. So it'll be very, very interesting to go into some new category. I've been through a lot together. We've been through morning blessings. We've been through the laws of tzitzis. We skipped a little bit out of the laws of tefillin because it wasn't pertinent to most people about how to write them. But we then have gone through all of laws of Shema and laws of Tefillah together. So look forward to many more days of learning Mishnah Berurah. All right, let's talk about the oopsies for the Shliach Tzibur. So guys, davening Shachris, okay, and he makes a mistake. What does he do? He skips one of the blessings, okay, any of them, and someone makes a mention of it, probably because they went, and then you stop for a second, you kind of look back from where you're Shliach Tzibur, and you look back, kind of go, make a movement, makes it sound like you didn't hear, and then finally tell you the actual bracha, but you probably hear the at first. Okay, and so when they make mention of that, he knows where to go back to the right place. You don't remove him from reciting it. Okay. There's one exception. If he skips Malshinim, okay, you kick him out. Why? Because maybe he himself is a heretic, an apikoris is what the word here is used. Okay. But if he did start it and then didn't finish it correctly or made a mistake in the words, you don't take him out. Only if he tries to skip it altogether. Okay, so the Mishnah Berurah explains. Oh, excuse me. I haven't even said anything. I'm already yawning. Okay, you skip something, which is to exclude if you intentionally skip something. Okay, in any blessing. So if it looks like he made a mistake, you can keep him there. But if he intentionally skips, you remove him. Okay. Any of the blessings. So the Mishnah Berurah explains what does it mean, any of the blessings. So even if he makes a mistake and he skips the blessing of Tchiyas HaMesim, right? He skips the first blessing, the first blessing before the Kedusha, okay, which is also known as the second blessing in total. Or you skip the 16th blessing, 16th, 15th, B'nai Yerushalayim. You skip the blessing of rebuilding Jerusalem. You still don't remove that person. Okay, maybe they deny those aspects of it. Okay, and they they deny the resurrection of the dead, or they don't believe in the coming of Mashiach. Okay, really, you assume that the fact that it was left out was an error, and the reason why is explained by the Beis Yosef, and he's quoting the Talmidei of Rabbeinu Yonah. Okay. However, that's from the Rishonim. Later authorities like the Taz say that if you skip both of them, that's not considered a mistake. Okay? You must be concerned in that case. Okay? It's not a mistake for them to try to skip it. It's intentional. And he further says, and if he tries to back out of it, you stop him and remove him. Okay? However, people disagree with that assertion. Now, if we, this still worked to find, heretics nowadays, since they have integrated such sophisticated acting. I mean, possibly. The difference was that a lot of the times this prayer was recited orally, so that's why it was a big difference, a big deal, and a big difference. So, excuse me, you didn't have a siddur in front of you. However, nowadays, if you see intentionally guys skipping pages, you should remove them. But yeah, that would be according to Taz. My goodness. Okay. Okay, so back to Mishne Berurah. So if we know for a fact that this person doesn't believe in the resurrection of the dead or doesn't believe in the coming of the redemption, okay, and furthermore, if they certainly don't believe that the Torah came from heaven, or that there's reparations for for reward and punishment, this person is an apikoros. You don't let them daven, and you can't let them daven. Okay, and if he doubles down on it, to stay there and won't be removed, then you don't remove him. Okay, and we did visit this previously. Okay, so in a previous halacha, when we talked about this with the laws of Shema, it says the following. Let me just open up to it real quick. 1 second. Looking forward here. So previously in Siman Nun Gimel 53:18, excuse me. So it says the following. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so when we were talking about all these different rules, so we said that people who say I won't lead the services because I have colored garments, okay, or because I have a certain type of shoe on, but this is something that is something that's particular. This person is recognized as an apikoros for doing that. Okay. However, if he explains why, he's like, yeah, my clothes aren't clean, or I smell bad, and blah, 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 that's fine. But if you know in any way, shape, or form, if there's ways in which you can identify him as an apikoros, then you should be strict about that, okay? And the Mishne Berurah himself makes note of this. He says that if we don't hear explicitly that he's an apikoros, then we don't assume that he is. But if we do know, then he says it's in Mem Zion, that we do know that you don't let him lead at all. Okay, so that's what the halacha is trying to get across over here as well. Okay, so you don't remove him. Yeah, and in Masechah Vozara. So we don't remove him. So which means you give him time to kind of remember how to get back to the right place. Right, he's flipping pages, and that's that. Okay, but he can't ask for help and he can't interrupt. So that's another important thing. Okay, and the problem is that when he skips, we're saying that he skips the whole blessing. Okay, but if he forgot the beginning of the blessing but finishes it correctly, that's not what we're talking about. Okay, so it's that if he doesn't say kofrim, he just has a different nusach than lamal shinim. Okay, you don't remove him because they say something different. Okay, so if his nusach for those brachos is different, that's okay as well, because as long as you're getting across the same idea. Okay, and when we say over here that he is removed immediately, if he skips Mamashim, okay, we don't wait for him to try to remember what place he's at. You don't want to flip the pages back to the right place. Nope, you kick him out immediately. Because maybe he, right now, at this very moment, he had a thought that I'm going to become an apikoros. So if that's the case, then you don't leave him up there. Okay, so, and you don't want to, cause him to be cursed, and you don't want him to have any other skipping in the brachas. Okay, so, but if he skips this one, and you kind of knew him to be a good guy, but now, hey, he had these thoughts and this change of heart right now. But unless you can kind of identify the fact that it was a mistake. Okay, and so too, as long as he starts the blessing, you don't remove him. Okay, even if he took a long pause. So he's like, maybe he just forgot the words. We're just saying that, again, it's other mistake. He's just, for whatever reason, is not having a good day with his memory. So again, he's not using a siddur. If he's using a siddur and he's making these mistakes, maybe he just shouldn't let him be a shliach tzibur for much longer. Let's see, one other thing over here that I want to point out. Okay. So before we get to the next halacha over here, so there's a statement that the Mishne Berurah over here makes in the Biur halacha. Okay, there's a lot of Biur halacha over here. Okay, so number one, if he skips a few brachos, that's okay. It just means that he is what's the word? He's just making a mistake. Now the question is, but wasn't that he takes a pause? That if he takes like a really long break and he can't figure out how to remember the words, and no one has a siddur around, okay, that's what we're talking about. So then you just kind of replace him, okay. And so it sounds like he really has a good long time trying to remember the blessings. So, and everyone's kind of standing there in silence, which I think is kind of impressive. So that's just so you get an idea that we're talking about people who don't have a siddur. Okay, moving right along to halacha beis now. Okay, now let's say he makes the mistake and he can't for the life of him remember to go back. Again, no siddur in front of him. Okay, or the siddur, we lost the siddur. Okay, he can't get back to the right place. Then replace him. Okay, and we explained those laws previously. Okay. Okay, let's see over here. Yeah, so we explained how that works. Now, okay, so and basically what we explained is also in the Gimel over there, in that same place that we were looking at. So you start from the beginning of the blessing of where he erred, especially if it was in the middle of a blessing. If he made an error in the first three blessings, then you just start from the very beginning. And if you made an error in the last three blessings, you go back to Ritzeh. Okay, so why is that? Okay, so if you can't remember, which is to say, the Mishne explains that he's just so lost, all right? And he can't get back, even if you tell him where to go back to. He just can't. He's just lost his rhythm for whatever reason. The original author of the section on heretics could not later recall the exact wording himself. Right. Well, that did happen. But as long as he knows there's supposed to be a blessing there, that's why they asked him to enact it, because there's one of the what's it called? One of the points was that they didn't actually enact the nusach. They just said, at this spot you need to say a blessing for this. So old Siddurim didn't always have the same exact words. We don't really start to standardize the words immediately at the time of the close of the Second Temple. We just had a format that some people hold it was just a format that was standardized. So that's why that would be that way. Okay, so you have somebody that replaces him, and it's better that somebody who's been listening to the prayer up until this time, okay, and wasn't distracted by chit-chatting, okay? And if you can't find somebody like that, then even people who aren't paying attention, and he can still go ahead and start and bring it all the way to the finish. Okay, so what do we learn from Siman Nun Gimel? So we say over there in Sif Yud Zayin, number 17, that someone should not be a sarvan. They should not try to say, pick somebody else. When they pick you, just go. Okay, so we say you go back to the beginning of the blessing, and that's even if there was no error at the beginning, but only at the end. Okay, you have to do a whole bracha. Okay, and it doesn't matter where, what the problem was, whether he made an error or he fainted, okay, and he just can't finish, and someone else has to go there to stand for him, okay? So therefore, during the Yamim Noraim, right, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, so sometimes the Shliach Tzibur gets weak, especially Yom Kippur, right? He's like dragging on with the piyutim and the na-na-na-na-na, right? And so now, then you should make sure that you replace them at the beginning of a blessing. Now, this is hard because the piyutim sometimes go, okay. So so it's always good if you can replace them like replace them, because then there's a really long piyut in the introduction to Kedusha. So that, for example, is a good place to replace them. Now back to the Mishnah Berurah. So, for example, and he says over here, or replace them at the beginning of Atal Bechartanu after you finish Kedusha is another example of that. Okay, because these are Shlosh Rishonos. So don't replace. So, because I'm incorrect. You can't replace him if he gets tired during right before Kedusha. You'd have to start the whole thing over again. So make sure that he knows that he can switch at Atal Bechartanu. Okay, and don't repeat the piyutim. But if he does collapse and you replace him and you don't go start at the Atar B'Chartanu, even if you are able to say the whole blessing, even the second blessing, okay, so then that's not a big deal. Okay, so we say at the end of the three you have to go back. So why? Because the first three and the last three are considered one long bracha. Okay, and therefore you should not split them up, whether it's with an error or he skips a blessing. Okay, so or faints or whatever it is, or he loses his voice. Okay, so you shouldn't do that. The first three and the last three you start at the beginning, either from the very beginning of Shemona Esrei, or in the last three you go back to the Ritzei. Okay, and that's in the work Nishmas Adam. Okay, and this was also a psak that Rabbi Kiva gave for somebody that collapsed during the piyut of the Seder of Kedusha, and they had to take someone else there in his place, that he told him to go back to the beginning of Shemona Esrei. Now, he said, now the Mishnah says, but I'll discuss with you later about a case of somebody collapses in the middle of of the poem itself. So Shliach Tzibur, who is a Kohen, and he's in the middle of the prayer, he knows that the person has died somewhere in the houses next to the courtyard where they're davening. Okay? If they're able to close all the doors and close all the windows of the shul, okay, and also the house where the person who died, is laying, they close it all up, you don't have to tell him in the middle of Shemona Esrei he needs to leave. Okay, he can go ahead and finish. So therefore, if he finishes his Shemona Esrei quietly, didn't do the petition yet, and they say, "Hey, you need to leave," well, someone else should then replace him for the rest of the Shemona Esrei. But if it's not possible, then then even in the middle of the Shemona Esrei, someone else should come and replace him. And that person should start from the beginning of the bracha. Okay, halacha 3. All the rules we said pertaining to when a single person has to do a prayer again, the Shliach Tzibur is also obligated by those same rules. And therefore, if while praying he makes an error just like that, and he's saying those prayers out loud, the exception is with Shacharis on the morning prayers on Rosh Chodesh. And if he forgot to say Yalav Yavo, okay, we don't make him repeat the Shemona Esrei again, because that would just be annoying for the whole congregation. And also because at Musaf you're going to say the whole order of the day out loud, so that's going to be okay. Okay, and you mentioned Rosh Chodesh there. But if you notice that you forgot to say Yalav Yavo before you finish the prayers, you should go back to Ritzei. And that's not a problem of keeping people waiting. The Ramah adds, some people say that if you make an error on Shabbos and Yom Tov, then the same thing is that as well. So if you made an oopsie to finish the prayer service, you have Musaf to rely on. Okay. So the Mishnah Berurah explains, we already learned these rules in chapter 124:10. You can go back and watch that shir again, okay? A couple weeks ago. So you didn't say Yalav Yavo, okay? If you forgot Mashi Varuach, Tain Talu Matar, or any of those things, then you have to go back, just like we learned. Only Yalav Yavo, does that count for relying on Musaf, okay? So, and if you make an error in Shacharis, like the Mishne, like the Ramah says, so you said a regular weekday Shemona Esrei where you should have said a Shabbos Shemona Esrei, and you forgot to mention anything about Shabbos or Yom Tov in it, and you finished the prayer. But if you remember before you finish, then you should go back to Yismach Moshe B'matnas Chalka. Okay? And if you're in Yom Tov, you go to Ata B'chartano. Okay? He says, however, in Siman, in Reish Samaches, in 265.5 later on, the Ramah seems to rule differently, but the Pri Megadim suggests that should be the rule here. Okay? And we say that the rule is like Rosh Chodesh, which is to say, but that should be the case. However, the Lavush brings a lot of different opinions that seem to not agree with that. But people who come later than Rav Mordechai Yaffe, the Lavush, they say you can follow the Ramah in this case. Okay. Last halacha. If the person who's doing the service, the Shliach Tzibur, is reciting a quiet Shemona Esrei, then you shouldn't repeat it again, right? You make an error while you're doing your private Shemona Esrei. Nope, don't repeat it. People are waiting. Don't keep them waiting. Okay, just know that when you're reciting the repetition out loud, that's the one that you should rely on, and that's assuming you didn't make an error in the first three blessings. Okay, so then you have to go ahead and repeat because that is a more enforceable rule for that. So if you forgot Mashiv Ruach or Geshem, for example. Now, what if you did that at Mara? The Mishra explains. Then you can repeat it again because there's nothing to repeat with. But on Shabbos, you can rely on the blessing afterwards. So if you made an error, you can rely on the blessing after that, the Mein Shava. Okay, and so this is brought down in Siman 268. So you make the boo-boo in the first two blessings. That's assuming, the Mishra explains, that you haven't finished your own prayer, okay, and people aren't going to wait for you afterwards. But if you finish your prayer service, then you don't start it over again and begin it again. And all the Yachronim agree with that. However, there's an opinion in the Torah that says that you do make everybody wait while you repeat the entire Shemona Esrei from the beginning, three blessings, and that seems to be the regular halacha. And if people want to take that approach, that's fine. Okay, so that is Siman 126, and then next week, let's see. We have a little bit of time. Let's see. Can we do? Can we finish 127 real quick? Yeah, we got some time. Let's do 127. We still got another 8 minutes. So, all right, Modin de Rabbanon, which is 127. Okay. When the Shliach Tzibur gets to Modim, he bends over, okay, and the congregation bends over with him. And they shouldn't bow more than is necessary. And they all say the words Modim Anachnu Lach. Okay, and the Ramah adds Sha'atu Hashem, Elokeinu Elokei Kol Basar, and so on. And then they finish with the words Baruch Kel HaHodaos. Okay, so you're bent over the whole time. Okay, and you don't say the name of Hashem again. Now, some people say that some people say you need to keep bending all the way at the end, and it's important to follow that opinion. Where's it saying here to stand up? Okay, so the Ramah then says that there are those who say that everything should be done in one bow, and such is the minhag. Okay. Okay, so that's not always the end of the bracha, but that's the end of the modim. Okay, the Mishne explains you shouldn't bend, which is that the congregation is listening to the Shliach Tzibur. Okay, so this is actually consistent with the language we brought earlier in Siman 113, number 5, which was to say you shouldn't bow down too far. Okay, and what it means by bending down too far, the Mishnah explains, is that you should bow like every other bow. Okay, and we learned that earlier. However, the Bach explains that you're supposed to recite the modim with the shliach tzibur. That you really shouldn't bend at all, but that's not our custom. So you recite it with the shliach tzibur. And the shliach tzibur continues on his way without waiting for the congregation to finish their private modim. He says the normal modim on his own, but you don't say the name of Hashem at the end. Okay. However, the Vilna Gaon says you do say Shem Hashem at the end, Baruch Atah Hashem Kel Hodaos, but we never took on that custom. The Ramah brings down that you do it in one bow. The Bach, however, says the name of Rab Shlomo Luria that you should actually stand up when you say the Shem Hashem until the very end, okay, and then bow again. However, the custom seems to be like the Ramah, but see the Bir Halacha. I think the Bir Halacha over here says something a little bit different. So the Bir Halacha says the following. So it says, okay, that you actually the minhag is actually to stand up, and that's really what our custom is. So he's funny sometimes. Okay, so it seems to be that we follow the opinion of the Ramah. It's funny how he takes stuff out of the Mishnah Berurah. It's like that didn't really need to be in a Bir Halakha. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out because that's not what most people see anyway. Okay, second halakha, if there are no Kohanim, then immediately afterwards, this is going to lead into Nesias Kapayim next week. Then the Shliach Tzibur says, Elokeinu v'Kelosinu b'Arachenu b'Bracha hamshuleshes b'Torah haktuva Aydei Moshe Avdecha, right? We're making mention of the 3 verses of the Berachas Kohanim. And then you continue to the end of the pasuk Vani Avarachem, which is from the quote from the Torah. However, you don't say Amen to that from the congregation. You say Kain Yihi Ratzon. Okay. Now the Ramah adds you don't say this blessing unless you're saying Berachas Kohanim and you're going to be lifting up your hands. And our custom is to say at Shachris these words, and we say the words Sim Shalom after that. Okay, and so too, anytime we say this paragraph of Elokeinu v'Elokei, okay. But if we aren't saying it, then we start the last blessing with Shalom Rav. Okay. Some people have the custom of saying Sim Shalom on this blessing for Shabbos. Okay. And also the reason why we do that is because it says in it Ki Be'or Panecha Nasat Halanu, right? Because of the light that you have shown in our eyes, which is the light of Torah, which is read more frequently on Shabbos at Mincha. Okay, so that is the Ramah explaining some of our customs. There's a lot going on in here. Now let's explain. Okay, so if there's no Kohanim, so we're going to learn in the next Siman, which is 128, and the Ramah is going to explain over there in the 10th halacha over there, that our custom is, even with our Kohanim, we are going to say this blessing. Okay? If you don't say it, you don't repeat it, if you skip it. Mishne explains. Now, Bivracha is with it's with a patach under it, okay, and the way that we say it is Ashkenazim is Kohanim Am Kodoshecha, okay, and the word Kohanim is independent to the words Am Kodoshecha, okay. Why? Because they are the Kohanim of the holy nation. Because we said the Kohanim are appointed by God themselves. And they are not appointed by the Jewish people. So the way this is translated is following. We are summoning the Kohanim, who are the agents of your holy nation. Okay? And when they say Yivarech Hashem, right, then you should, the first blessing, you should turn your face towards the Aron, okay? Okay? And then when you get to the end of it, Vayishmerecha, then you should look at your own right, okay? And when Yair Hashem, you should look straight ahead, and then Panav Elecha, then you turn to your left, okay? And then to turn that, and then also at the end, you look straight ahead, okay? So you're looking at the Aron, it says, Yivarecha Hashem Yishmerecha, you turn to the right, Yair Hashem Panav Elecha B'chanecha, you turn to the left, Yisrael Hashem Panav Elecha B'Simcha Shalom, look straight ahead, okay? Okay, and we don't, and the Avar Chaim, which is the following pasuk in the Torah, we don't say that one. Okay. Okay, and the Tzibor says Keni Hiratson only when the Kohanim do that, because the Amen is only for the actual blessing that's being said. Okay, and therefore the Shliach Tzibor is always saying it as a request that we should get blessed like they are there. Okay, there are some people who say something differently, who do say Amen even when the Kohanim are not there. I don't know upon what they rely to do that. So we say Keni Hirason, so which is to say that after every single one of the three blessings of the Kohanim, we say these words, and the Shliach Tzibor organizes them correctly in the correct order in his prayers. Okay. So some people say it only at the end of all three, and some people say it at the end of each one of the three. Okay, and this is only meant to be done when you actually are reciting a time for Nesias Kapayim, which is to say Shachris and Musaf, and not Mincha, and not on a, what's it called? So you also add this on a public fast day, even for Mincha. Okay, why? Because in those days you can say Birchas Kohanim on those times. Okay. And if a person's holding an individual fast, he won't say Sim Shalom, he's only going to say Shalom Rav. Okay? Now, if you made a mistake and said Sim Shalom, whether it's, in the afternoon, or you say Shalom Rav at Shachris, you fulfill your obligation. Okay? And some people have the custom to say Sim Shalom all the time. All right, but that's it. We have now finished all the laws of Shmona Esrei. And we will pick up with a new section next week. This finishes all of Chelek Aleph of the Mishnah Berurah. So thank you for everybody who has stuck with the class. We officially finished Chelek Aleph. And I will probably celebrate this with a quick review session. And for those who are interested, I will be putting together a review of the rules in Chelek, of all the laws of Chelek Aleph. It'll put it into a little app. If you would like to review. So I will be working on that, so stay tuned. Thank you everyone for joining Chelek Aleph, and we'll begin with Chelek Beis next week with the laws of Nesias Kapayim. Thank you for coming. Take care.